Welcome to Godly Grind. Let this moment be a reminder that you are loved, important, and created for a purpose bigger than yourself. This safe place was created to help you on your journey in your God-given purpose. Get ready to listen to entrepreneurs, learn from their stories, and apply that wisdom to your godly grind. I'm your host, Kaylin. Grab a pen because this is about to be good. Thank you so much for coming on.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
I want to welcome you to Godly Grind. This is a place where we talk about entrepreneurship and we talk to entrepreneurs that have perseverance, drive, and also a love of God, because we want to truly figure out how does God equate in your big plan of success or the success you've already achieved. So Ms. Demetria, she is the owner of Michigan Premier Cleaning, Madison Will Clothing, the Forte Collection, the Forte Beauty Collection as well. So she's a super busy bee, and we're really happy to have you on. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. You are welcome. Our topic today is stepping out on faith, walking into uncharted territory with knowledge and the power of God. Bow your heads and close your eyes. All right, dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today saying thank you so much for life, health, wealth. Thank you for another chance. God, it's okay to not be okay. And I want to ask you for strength and power to get to the next day. Help us figure out this life we have. And if we can't figure it out, help us through it to the best way you know how to. God, give us wisdom. And we want to thank you for that extension of power, love, grace that you give us each and every day. Help us tap into it each and every day. We love you. In Jesus' name, this I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Jumping right back into it, we love to know exactly how our entrepreneurs started their Christian journey. Who introduced you to God? What's the story?
My dad introduced me to God. He taught me, obviously, the I'm not going to say the basics, but, pray when you wake up in the morning, pray before you go to bed, and, thank God for another day and thank God for your blessings and, just the basis of what it means to be a follower of Christ. Doing good, putting out good into this world, giving back to the less fortunate, just giving back to others in general, and just being a blessing to someone and loving others for who they are, being there for people, and just really and praising God and worshiping God within the process as well.
Mm-hmm. I got you. So when we do build a relationship, I know me personally, when I try to build my relationship with God, I try to hit like 3 areas. So I try to pray, I try to read the Bible, and then I try to intentionally worship. So either music, either dance, either talking to people about God, like outreach, anything of that sort. And then of course, I also, when worshiping, I use church as a tool to worship, right? And fellowship, like-minded individuals like myself. Do you attend church?
Yeah, I attend church every Sunday, Bible study every Wednesday. Virtual church now, but when it was when I was going to physical church, then I was able to go into the building. But every Sunday, yeah, and Bible study every Wednesday, and I am the church. I worship God, I praise God, I read my Bible every day. I have my quiet time, is what I call it, with God every day. So yeah.
Yeah. And a couple of people said that on the show, that we are the church. What does that mean?
So for me, it just means being a living example of God's love and spreading that love wherever you go. It doesn't matter if you're on the bus, if you're at the supermarket, if you're at work, if you're wherever you are, if you're out just shopping or just whatever you may doing wherever you are, it's just showing and being that example of God's love, and just showing everyone like God is real and God is within me.
Mm-hmm. You did say that letting God's light, shine through you, being a representation of who God is. But to that person that's considering going to church, but they've encountered some really nasty church people, and they think that, okay, since they're angry, they're nasty, like God probably is really big and angry at me because, I'm not perfect. Right. So what would you say to that person to then encourage them to go to church? Like, what's the importance of church?
The importance of church, obviously, yes, you're going there to fellowship and worship with, you know, everyone around you, you know, the congregation, but you're going there for God. You're not going there for everyone else, you know, and I can't stress that enough. Like, you literally are going there for God, to worship and praise God, to be in the Lord's house. And it's not about, you know, what someone is wearing, what someone is saying, what someone is doing. It's literally like, when I go to church, it's me and God. You know, like, I'm there to worship God. Obviously, I'm there to fellowship as well, but it's really all about God. The sole purpose of us being there is to be in God's presence, you know, in God's house. And, you know, there's going to be negative people or negativity when you go to work, but that doesn't stop you from going to work. You have to pay your bills. You know, you have to put food on your table. So go to church and feed your spirit as well, you know.
Right. And to add to that, church does and might have nasty people in it, but don't let their actions be a complete representation of who God is. One
Exactly.
thing I've learned is look towards or to Jesus if you really want to know God's character, because
Right.
they're one in one, you know, they're basically the same people. So don't look to Mother Jill, you know, because
Yeah.
she been in the church for 50 years and she cussing out everybody. Don't look towards her too. Of course, she should be a representation of who God is, but some people fall short, and that's just what people do, right? Because we're human, we're
Right.
not perfect, we all fall short, and that person might be falling short right in front of your eyes. So just don't let that reflect on how great God is, right?
Right.
Don't pull him down because she tripping, you know.
Right.
So, and to your point, yeah, learning about God, that definitely builds the relationship, and builds our relationship. I do love going to church because I like to learn from individuals
Mm-hmm.
or Christians or like-minded Christians like myself, because I consider the walk of faith a journey. So
Yeah.
a walk is just step by step, you know, and some people are a little further along in their journey than I am. So they
Right.
might know a little bit more, a couple tricks of the trade. They might be well versed on some stories that might touch or help me through life. I truly like to, you know, weed through the good and the bad and the wise and the
Right.
unwise when it comes to church, and see if I can learn from people, you know. And yeah, and of course learn from the pastor, because of course pastors, you know, they put the Bible in perspective, like a modern day
Right.
perspective, to me anyways, you know. And that's what I love most about pastors. No, they're not perfect, but I feel like they have the gift of gab, and
Yeah.
put the perspective, the modern day perspective, so it makes the Bible clear on how it relates to, you know, modern day life. So
Like you said, like, you know, a pastor isn't perfect. No one is perfect. And I think that is kind of the mindset that you need to have going into church. If you've had a bad experience with one person or a group of people, no one is perfect. And, you know, the only soul, the only being that is perfect is God. You know, so at the end of the day, none of us are perfect in this world. So go into church, and if you have that bad experience with someone, still kind of try to give it a chance, you know, because like you said, no one is perfect. That's just bottom line. No one is perfect, and people are going to make mistakes, or people are going to maybe rub you the wrong way, whatever the case may be. But also remember, like, all right, they're not perfect, but also I'm here for God. So at the end of the day, whatever they have going on within them, they have to take that up with God. You know, not it's not, you can't place yourself at fault for the negativity someone is projecting onto you.
yeah. And don't let Mother Jill get in the way of your relationship with God. Period.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because Mother Jill not gonna be with you at the pearly gates talking about, like, can I come in? Like, that's not about that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So yeah, and the relationship with God probably is definitely the most important part of Christianity to me anyways. Um, but why do you believe in God? So to that person that's like, yeah, that God stuff sound cool. Like, you know, I can't see him.
Mhm.
Like, you know, like why? Like, why do you believe in God?
Okay, so I believe in God because as a kid, I believed in God because it was what I was taught by, like, my dad, my grandmother, you know. But as I got older and I I began to have my own life experiences, and I began to go through my own trials and everything, I started to see God for myself. I've taken the tools, obviously, that was provided to me by my dad and my grandmother, reading my Bible and praying and fasting, and those things that are essential in your walk with Christ. But, having certain experiences in life and literally not having, or feeling like you don't have anyone else to turn to but God, because of what my dad instilled in me at a young age, that kind of gave me the foundation. But ultimately, my life choices and my life experiences are what led me to grow in my relationship with God. So I believe in God because I've had personal experiences where God has been the one to save me, not my dad, not my grandmother, not my friends or anything. It was God. God saved me. God came to my rescue. God provided for me when literally there seemed to be no way out of a certain situation. There seemed to be no way to, you know, provide for myself, or whatever the case may have been. At that time, God provided for me. He provided the things that I needed. He provided me with everything, and he gave me hope. He gave me strength when I needed it. He gave me courage when I needed it, and he strengthened my faith, at times that I needed it. And it wasn't my dad, or it wasn't, anyone around me. It was nothing but God. So when you have those experiences, you can't deny it. You can't deny that it just happened, by chance. It was God. It was God's blessing. It was God's grace and mercy that got me through the situations and times that, I needed to get through.
And I love that you identified that it was God, because a lot of people give that praise to the universe. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh yeah, the universe. But it's like, no, there is a person, that loves you beyond your comprehension, like let's point to him when it comes to that. And I love how you also said that, God shows up when you needed him most. And I love to identify God moments. I just introduced your businesses and you building your businesses and things like that. But I want to hear about a moment when God showed up either in your professional journey or your personal journey that intertwined with you creating your businesses, just something that really resonated with you.
This is, I don't think I've shared this with anybody, but so last year in January, I'm very, very into my relationship with God. Like, I pray and I fast. I need to hear God's voice before I make a decision. I need to hear God say go ahead and do it, or no, that ain't it. So I was praying and God gave me a date, which was June 24th, 2020. And so I'm kind of confused about what the date was. I'm like, okay, I don't know. I was planning to launch one of my businesses. So I'm thinking that was maybe the date that I would be doing so. So I worked toward that. And then obviously the unexpected happened with the pandemic, and I was quarantined in New York by myself. And I just kind of, around June, I was like, okay, you know what? I think I need to go home and be with my family. So got on a flight, came home to Detroit, and a few weeks into me being here, I was let go from my job. And the date that I was let go from my job was June 24th. And it was a situation where I was kind of relieved, because I had also been praying and, fasting and taking the necessary steps to get the clarification from God that it was time for me to step into my entrepreneurial journey. So I was really nervous about it, but I was like, okay, so this is what God was telling me. He was trying to tell me that this date is going to be the date that you're going to be able to work full time for yourself. So June 24th was the last day. Well, it wasn't the last day, but it was the date that I was officially let go from my job. But I still had a little 60 days they gave me. We kind of talked things out, or whatever the case may be. They knew I was relocating back home, so it was okay. But yeah, so it was kind of I had never been fired before, so I was really kind of hurt about that. But at the same time, God just reassured me this is going to work out for the better. Everything's going to work out for the better. He definitely reassured me that I was going to be working full time for myself, which is something that I wanted to do for so many years, but I just hadn't taken initiative to do it. I hadn't done the things that I needed to do in order to do so. So, yeah, I had no plans on moving from New York. I had no plans on doing a lot of the things that I'm doing now, just because I was kind of a little afraid to just step out on faith and step out and do those things at the time that I know I needed to do it. But God was like, listen, I got other plans for you. He gave me a little preview of what he had planned for me, but he didn't let me know everything he had planned for me. He gave me a date. He gave me, the visions of my businesses, and he gave me the blueprint. And he's like, all right, here's the blueprint. Here's what you're gonna be doing. This is what you're gonna, but how you're gonna get there, you gotta wait to see.
On me.
Yeah.
Literally on me, period.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, wow. Okay. So you mentioned a whole lot in that. And of course, we all have a life before our entrepreneurship journey. Like me, of course, I had jobs here and there, but of course, naturally, I'm an entrepreneur. So like I was selling candy in high school and just really, really interesting entrepreneur things back in the day. But me and Demetria met in college. She is my home girl from college. Yes. And I vividly remember and I don't even know if I told you this, but you remember when you asked me to start the boutique with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was so happy because I felt so seen. I felt like, oh, like she really sees me in this fashion department, really trying to, do my best. And she sees my work and she low key believe in my work and believe in me. So first I want to say thank you for seeing me at that point in college. And
of course, girl.
Yes, I was like, me. But no, I do want to say thank you for that. Tell us some steps you took before your entrepreneurship journey. So what led you up to that? So we could talk about jobs in high school, jobs in college, and of course you're to New York. Gotta talk about that.
Oh yeah.
Period. So let's go.
Okay. So I've always been kind of like a hustler. I've always had like the hustle in me. I've always wanted to have my own. I always wanted to just like live life by my own, or play by my own rules pretty much. And like be the boss of my own life. But yeah, so I mean, obviously you have to, in order to get to that space, you have to go through other situations. So I worked in retail, typical fashion student stuff. I worked in retail. I worked as a sales associate. And then eventually, my last year of college, I worked as a visual manager for a furniture company. And from there, that's how I got my job in New York. I was hired as a visual manager for another furniture company in New York. And that initially was not what I wanted to do. I went to school for fashion merchandising, not for interior design. So that was kind of like, I felt a little stuck because that's not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, or that's not what I wanted to do in the long run. But, that was my opportunity to get to New York. And I seen that as my way of getting my foot in the door in New York. So I took the job. And upon moving to New York, I was commuting for 2 hours a day. I literally took the job and found an apartment in Brooklyn, but I was working in Long Island. So it was really like I was traveling so far every single day to get to work, but I just kept telling myself, like, this is not your end. This is not your final destination. I will always remind myself this isn't your final destination. So I worked as a visual manager for a little over a year. And from there, I eventually found a job that was in Brooklyn, that was closer to home. My commute was shorter. And I worked as a store manager for a women's clothing company. And so from there, I worked there for a little over a year. And then from there, I got my corporate position that I worked for a retail company. And yeah, I was working in Manhattan. I was like living the dream, like I literally worked my way up. So it was kind of like exciting to have that experience. But yeah, so I eventually got the corporate position. And from the corporate position, which I was let go from during the pandemic, and in the middle of the pandemic, and I jumped into entrepreneurship.
Right. So just jumping back to that decision where you had to jump out on faith when you moved to New York and getting that job that didn't really align with where you were going, but you knew it could catapult you to another job you really liked or loved in New York. How was that transition, and how did that decision strengthen your faith with God? So did God instruct you to go to New York, or did you kind of just jump out there like, no, God, I know you want me to do this. So,
Yeah.
and I know you're
I'm
going to
just do it and see what happens. No. So at this point in my life, I was not making a single decision without God. Not a single decision was being made without God. But I woke up one morning, and this was in June of 2017. I woke up one morning and God told me that I was moving to New York. And I was like, I ain't got no job offers. I've been applying.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going. I'm literally telling God, like, no, I'm not. Like, all right, now you tripping out. No, but no, I was really like, I was in denial about it, because I'm like, how am I gonna go? I haven't received any job offers. I'm thinking like he's telling me like I'm gonna go ASAP. But I was, so at this point I'm like, nah, I just don't see that happening. Like, I don't know. So I started to apply to jobs in like Chicago, because I'm like, okay, well, I can transfer my job and, and just kind of get away from home and just kind of like finally like spread my wings, I guess, and finally just like branch out and do my own thing. So Chicago was like set in stone for me, not for God. So I applied for the job to transfer my position to another location, but I never heard back from like the head of our department in that region. So I was kind of like, I work for the company. Like, you're opening new locations, you need a visual, like, why am I not getting a job? Like, what's going on? I work for the company. So I went to New York for Fashion Week with one of my friends. We went to New York for Fashion Week, and I was so in love. I was so happy with just being there. I was like, I have to move here. Like, I absolutely have to move here. But part of me was still kind of like, but you might be moving to Chicago. You already made the decision to move. I'm really like, Chicago's still on my mind. Even though I still haven't heard back from the guy or anything, like, I'm still like, Chicago is where it's at for me. But it wasn't. After, leaving New York, I was just kind of like, man, I really just like can't wait to move there. And I think we had a conversation, because we had plans to move there, and we were saying like, I was like, well, maybe January would be a good time for me to move. This was September when I went during Fashion Week, the first week of September. And by the end of September, I had received a job offer, like for a job that I didn't even know I applied to. Like, I was literally like going through like on LinkedIn and Indeed.com, like, where did I apply to this job? I didn't see it. They didn't even have my application. Like, I had to fill out a whole application. I'm like, how did you even get my information? But I don't even remember applying to the job. But it was literally like 3 weeks after I came back from New York for Fashion Week, I received a job offer. And I accepted the job offer, and I was like, okay, so this is what God was talking about. But of course, I'm still like in disbelief. So I like fasted for like 3 days. I'm like, I need to know this is God telling me, because this is huge. Everything literally worked out according to God's divine plan for my life, because the positions all the way in New York, I'm assuming that I was going to have to fly there for the interview and, wait it out and all this other stuff. And literally, as I'm preparing to book a flight, I received a phone call from from the head of HR. And she's like, we're going to just do a video interview. And I'm like, what? So at this point, I'm still in denial. And I'm like, okay, I'm nervous. Like, what if I don't get the job? I did the interview. It went really well. And literally like within I think it was like maybe like an hour or 3 hours or something like that, I was receiving a job offer to move there. And I'm like, okay, so this is what God was telling me. Like, he was really like, it was for real. Like, like I was really moving to New York, and I just couldn't believe it. I was really in disbelief. But yeah, I'm like, so I really need to take, when God tells me something, I need to take that and I need to really listen to it and not try to do my own thing. You
Yeah.
know, sometimes I think that's where we can get a little caught up with, you know, even though God has given us direction to do one thing, we try to do something completely different. And it's like, no, just do what he's telling you to do. So at this point, I think because I was so in denial about it, I think that's why I was trying to like turn from it so much, but I couldn't run from it no matter how much I wanted to, because he literally kept blowing my mind every time. Like, there's no way that I don't even remember applying for this job and I'm receiving this job offer. It was just kind of like real, like crazy to me, but it all worked out in the end.
Yes. And I think the coolest part of your story is like God will make provision for his plan. Like
Yeah.
you don't have to fight for God's plan to work. It's kind of like, yeah, it's my plan, so it's gonna happen. So I'm gonna make some provision for you.
Yeah.
Demetria did mention like how we were supposed to move to New York. Now, you were okay. Look, you were way wiser than me when it came to just, I feel like, journey and growth in God and you know, having a relationship with him. So back in the day, I wasn't asking God for nothing. So it was like, you know what I'm saying? It was like, go to work, make some money, save money so you can then be your own support system if you need something. Plan out your life, you know, because your life should go, you know, you should go to fashion school, get a degree, go to New York, work in New York, and then start your own company after you work in New York. Like, duh, that's my life. Yep, I already know my life, you know. When we were in college, we went to Western Michigan University together. And I was telling myself, so God wasn't telling me that I was going to New York, but I was definitely telling myself like, oh yeah, I'm going to New York, going to New York, right? But there was no provision made. So I think while I was in Italy, I applied to a lot of jobs. I kind of want to say I capped out at like a couple hundred jobs when it came to like applying. And I didn't receive like any calls, you know, like the only corporate call I received was from Carter in Atlanta, you know? So I'm like, bro, you know, so I didn't want to muscle my own plan at that point. So I decided to stay on in Detroit, but I'm so happy that it's just refreshing to hear like a young girl. Cause how old were you back in college? Like what, 20, 19?
When I graduated? Like 22,
Just
23.
23 when you graduated?
Yeah.
Oh,
I was
okay.
22, 23 when I graduated.
Okay. But no,
2017. Yeah.
it's just real refreshing, like just hearing how in tune you were with God and how trusting you were of him with his plan and not your plan. Because you talk about Chicago. Oh yeah, Chicago, because that's close to home. You know, we from Detroit, Michigan, so it's real close to home.
Yeah.
So I already understood. I already understood where you was going with that. Okay, it's close to home. You know, I could get support when I need support. But God had other plans, and he was your support, which is super cool. So of course, that decision strengthened your faith, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I love to bring a little Bible in the mix. So Joshua 3, chapter 3, I was reading about how the Israelites left the grove and they arrived at the Jordan River, like the banks of the Jordan River. They were trying to go into Jericho and basically take over Jericho, burn down Jericho. But they had to cross the Jordan River. So like a river with nothing though. Like they didn't have no boats. They didn't have no, you know what I'm saying, no canoes. Like, nothing, you know, didn't have none of that. And all they had was the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark was basically, I believe it was gold plated, and it was like a chest, and it had the 10 Commandments written on stone tablets in them. So they had that, and that was it. But that was like the word, you know, that was the word to them, you know. I'm pretty sure they didn't have no Bibles with, you know, their story in it yet, you know. So that's all they had. Joshua and God, they were homeboys basically. And like Moses, Moses and God, they were homeboys too, but Moses passed away. So Joshua kind of stepped into his place and became that man that truly listened to him and followed him and heard his voice and had faith in his plan to then guide or lead others where God wants them to be. So Joshua was the boss, big boss, and he basically heard that he was supposed to cross the Jordan River. But in the Bible, it doesn't say that Joshua asked, like, okay, God, like how? So when you were saying like, I'm leaving up the how to him, like he just told me where I was going to be,
Yeah.
So all Joshua got was, okay, you're going to be, on the other side, taking over Jericho, right? The guards told the citizens or whatever, told them like, just stay about a mile back from the Ark of the Covenant. So they carried the Ark of the Covenant and they started walking towards the Jordan River. And the river split, or the water stopped like gushing and running, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So they were able to cross, right, without dying, essentially. So Joshua's faith led to them, of course, winning the battle, them, of course, going to that next step. But no, I think Joshua having faith in God's plan and just kind of erasing his own, or just following his will and God's will, and making sure that God's will was his will, and just him being a servant of Christ definitely benefited him, but it also benefited the people that were following him, right? They were all, in a sense, pleasing God and keeping his purpose and plan for humanity and society going. So Joshua definitely had faith when crossing that Jordan River. So why is stepping out on faith so important to you?
Stepping out on faith is important to me because when you're stepping out on faith, you're showing God, like, I trust you. I trust you with my life. I don't know where you're taking me, but I trust you. You're showing God that basically you trust him. And for me, stepping out on faith was huge. It's obviously scary, but that was like a huge test of my faith to step out on faith. A huge test of my trust for God, the trust that I have in God, to step out on faith and to do what I had to do, or what God was instructing me to do. Like, obviously, I learned that sometimes when you hear that voice or that's speaking to you, it can either be you convincing you that it's God, or it can be the enemy trying to convince you that it's God, or it's God really actually speaking to you. And for me, it was really like, okay, I'm stepping out on faith and I want to do this because I believe that God is telling me to do this. But I don't know if I'm doing this because I want to do it, because the enemy is telling me to do it, and he's trying to creep in and trying to do something in my life, or it's really God telling me to do it. So I think that when you step out on faith and you're doing your best to trust God and trust the process of where he's leading you and everything. Stepping out on faith to me means just simply putting your trust in God and showing him that you trust him.
Definitely, yeah. And personally, man, listen, Demetria making it sound super easy. You basically, because Demetria,
it's not at all.
Right? You know what I'm saying? Demetria is basically a superhero at this point. She's making it seem very easy. And I just want to be here to tell you that it's not. Like,
no,
having faith
not.
is not easy, especially having faith in something that you can't see. So
yeah.
if you feel like you're struggling with Christianity, you're scared, you're struggling with faith, that's okay. Like,
absolutely.
Okay, like Demetria has been following God for a really long time now, and I feel like she's been doing it correctly, if there is a correct way, but a more active way, more so, for a long time. I've heard that faith is a muscle, and we kind of have to exercise that muscle the best way we know how. So
I like that.
Y'all, thank you, girl. But yes, Demetria listening to God first, right? And being able to hear God, limiting those distractions around her so that she can hear God. Because God not about to come down like, oh, it's me. Like, you're not about to get it. Like, he's not about to get the screaming to you like, girl, no. Like, it's not him,
No.
So he's more so quiet. I heard that he's a gentleman. Like, if something in your head is louder, if that draw to your boyfriend is louder than the voice of God, and it just might be, you might not be able to hear him. So if you don't hear him, try to limit those distractions in your head when it comes to boys, money, greed, lust, pride. Just try to minimize all of those to try to hear the voice of God. But then once you hear that, that's your chance to jump out on faith, jump out on faith and just take that step out there. So God knows, like, okay, she really loved me. Like, okay, she really believes in me. Okay, like, she really believes that I'm almighty and all powerful. And, okay, I like this. Okay, let's take the next step together,
Yeah.
So faith is not easy, especially when it comes to me and my journey. Right now, I'm finding peace in it, which is really, really cool. Because at first I was really not angry, but I was definitely frustrated. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like I made this plan for my life. God, why don't you support it? Like, it's a great plan. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to murder 16 people and steal millions of dollars from a bank. Like, I'm not trying to do none of that. Like my plan is good. But, his plan, of course, is better than your plan when it comes to it. Oh, well, thank you so much again for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's been lit. Yes. But no, yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for helping me out, giving me those words of wisdom and encouragement throughout my journey. And
Absolutely.
I really do appreciate it, for sure, for sure.
Of course.
This has been a great episode. I know you learned a lot, just like I learned a lot. If you have any questions for me in regards to business, entrepreneurship, God, Christianity, please DM me. You can also DM Demetria as well. We aren't afraid. We don't bite. And if we don't know, then of course, we'll send you some resources or send you somewhere else that might be better equipped to answer those questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we're just here to help. And that's really the premise of this podcast, to help you on your entrepreneurship journey and pointing to God along the way. Because I promise to you, being an entrepreneur is hard. And people rarely say that. It's real easy to post, oh, I got my first $1,000 check, or, oh, I did this. But how many nights did you cry? And I feel like those times bring us closer together, because it's like, I feel for you, I'm really happy for your success. But now, your success is my success at this point.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you overcame something that I'm either going through or already have. So thank you once again. And this has been another episode of Godly Grind. We're checking out, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Godly Grind. It was extremely exciting hearing Demetria's big leap of faith to New York. She had to do a lot of trusting God blindly. She learned from all of her ups and downs she experienced in New York. All of her obstacles strengthened her relationship in God, and her leap of faith refined her character. Stay tuned for next week's episode. We will be talking about conquering trauma. Now, we all go through traumatic experiences through life, all of which will work for our good. Demetria uncovers the obstacles she went through when moving to New York. We also go through a couple traumatic experiences and how we maintained through them and overcame them. So again, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Godly Grind. I'll see you in the next episode.